Hello, and good evening, or good day, or good morning, whenever you're listening to or watching Unloose the Goose. This is episode 36, and we have Sal Mayweather, Peter Quinones, Nicole Sauce, and myself, Xavier Hawk. And today we're coming to you live from across the planet to discuss entrepreneurialism in the form of podcasting-ism. And we're going to be discussing all of the ins and outs of podcasting, how you too can start speaking your inane words all throughout the airwaves and on the interwebs, and hopefully some motherfucker's going to listen to you. So today's episode should be an interesting jaunt down the road of podcasting. Number of ways to monetize it, number of ways to build it, a number of ways to do it, and it seems to be all the craze these days. In fact, if you've got a topic and or subject matter that you're even like remotely interested in doing, I've seen people start video blogs or video podcasts. In all manner of sectors, right? From everything from educational series on permaculture and spin farming, like our friend Curtis Stone, or surviving and prepping in the ways of Jack Spirko in the Survival Podcast. So, like I said, we're here today discussing podcasting. Sal, how is your podcast going, and how did you start it? Like, what came up for you and was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking talk about this now?
My podcast is actually still pretty small. People think I have a big podcast. I don't. I don't know. I guess the impetus was just that all of the different voices in the Liberty community, I wasn't really satisfied with the sort of lack of agorist representation. And I was like, well, you know what? I might as well jump in. Everybody else has a podcast. So that's why I got started. It was really easy to get started, but my first few episodes were just like god awful. I mean, like terrible. But I guess that you can't really avoid that, I don't think,
Yeah, it's like you have to kind of get your feet wet some way, right? And crawl before you can run.
Jump into the water head first.
Yeah, even if you're good at public speaking, it seems like the minute you just have to speak to this emotionless mic.
Right.
It takes a while to get yourself amped up.
Yeah. Peter, how about you? How did it start for you? Sounds like NA, right?
Yeah.
How did it start for you?
I wanted to do something, and I started writing, and I just wasn't interested in writing. So I had some recording experience, and I just started recording. I wanted to try and keep everything at like 15 minutes. And then one thing, like if people contact me and they're like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, I'm like, okay, so let's say you got 15 episodes under your belt. What are you going to do after that? And that's basically the way it happened for me. Was I got to 15, 16 episodes and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And I noticed that Rayford Davis on Twitter said, if you have a podcast, let's talk. And so I just contacted him, and interviews became my thing. After, my first 15 or 16 is like basics of volunteerism kind of thing. And then I just became an interviewer after that. And I'm happy with it. And now I've gotten to the point where I don't even really like to interview. I just want to have a discussion with people. And I think that people are into that and see where it goes and everything like that. I don't even really want to have a topic. I just really want to just start going. And it's working out pretty well. It's worked out really well.
That's awesome. That brings up some questions for me that I'll leave for like round two. We'll let Nicole go, and then I want to dive into some of the ins and outs of it all. Okay, Nicole, how about you?
She's sleeping.
Is she meditating? Did she turn into Biden?
She's frozen.
She's frozen.
Ah.
Bye, Nicole.
Well, hopefully she gets unfrozen. I guess in the meantime, I'll say, on my experience on how I got started was, she dropped. Uh-oh. Does that mean we stopped going live? No, that'll be okay.
I'm the host now.
You are the host. Yeah. So she'll be back. Hopefully her internet's not out. So for me, Baseline started actually because out of the geese, I was the only person who was not doing anything, right? Like I had this company that I've been working on, and I have given talks all over the planet and all of these things, but I actually wasn't doing a consistent public thing, and I came up with Baseline, like, how little work can I do with the most effect, and how little of my time can I put to this? Because I research all the shit that's going on anyway. So I decided, like, well, I'll just turn that into it. And instead of telling people bad news in a bad way, I'll just tell it to them in a funny way. And hopefully they like it. And they have, it's grown humongously which has been cool. And I've actually been considering doing like a longer form podcast. But so it's curious to me. I guess the next question I had for you, Pete, it was how much prep work did you put into your first episodes versus where you're at now?
Basically, like the first 15 episodes, I almost wrote them out word for word.
Mm-hmm.
There were some, as you start speaking and you're reading, some things will come to you and you'll deviate a little bit. But I mean, it was like, I think the first one I did on the police, I really didn't have to research because I knew pretty much everything. I talked about some court cases. And the second one, I think I did it on Antifa. And I wanted to talk about the original Antifa, like Italy, 1920. So that was research. I had to go and look up people's names and look at what, what Antifa was like back then. And there was research for a bunch of them. And I've done some interviews where I've actually, had to read like the person's book or, at least get an overview of what they were talking about. But
right.
If you're at this point now, it's very rare that I'm like have questions written ahead of time. If I'm interviewing Dr. Paul, I'll have stuff written ahead of time. But because he likes a more interview kind of environment, like more interview kind of thing. But I just, now it's maybe if I don't really know who the person is, I'll research them and who they are. But for the most part, I'm coming up with things off the top of my head and, just trying to get people to talk and say things and get comfortable and say things they normally wouldn't. And, it's not like not a gotcha kind of thing, but really to get people comfortable and really get what their opinion is. Cause that's, to me, digging deep and finding out where people are really at is what's important. And I think a lot of people are very reserved and they don't want to really say what they're thinking. And I've just gotten to the point where I'm just blurting out what I'm thinking. And
and that makes them more comfortable, right?
Yeah, well, it makes them more comfortable. It makes, it's increased my audience exponentially over the last year. But
you're not necessarily giving them what you think they want. You're giving them yourself. You're comfortable in yourself, and they just like yourself.
Yeah, I'm not giving anybody what I'm just whatever. All the stuff before a year ago that I used to suppress and be like, okay, I need to be a good, respectable libertarian,
right?
And and be like all the ones that came before me, and maybe I'll even adopt a bow tie. Now that went all out the window and everything. So. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you have a good amount of success. I don't know if many of the Goose folks know how prolific your work is. And you were mentioning before we went live that you're getting invited to speak at all of these conventions and conferences. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was contacted, and so I'm speaking at the Libertarian Party convention in Washington State next week, and I'm Dave Smith's fill-in. He couldn't make it, so it's like, okay, can you go? And I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a lot different than what Dave would say. Yeah, but so that's nice. And then I was contacted about Pork Fest and doing a screening of the Monopoly on Violence, the documentary that I did with my, and then field questions and things like that. So I'll be up there for the better part of 3 or 4 days. And I've never been I've been to New Hampshire. I went to Liberty Forum. That happens in February. So you're hiding inside. So this will be cool because it'll be outdoors in June and everything. And it's a lot bigger festival. And I think this year it's going to be friggin' huge because people just want to get the hell out. So.
Yeah, I think, not to take it too far off, but everything that's been going on has really woken up a lot of people to a large degree, and also like people who might have never considered libertarianism or agorism or even looked for any alternatives are just coming to the fore and finding folks like yourselves and myself and wondering, how do I get involved and stuff. So when did you start getting invited to speak at things in your podcasting career, basically?
The first thing I was invited to speak at was Liberty Forum in New Hampshire, February 2019. So, okay. And that would be so 18 months after I started podcasting. So like a year and a half into podcasting. And they had asked me 6 months before. So I was a year into podcasting when when I was asked, and so that was cool. Yeah, and I go to a lot of events, and
you
I
went
was
to it
scheduled.
before, and you were getting people to interview because of those events. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. And so would you recommend for young people or young in the podcasting game, let's say, or the video podcast or whatever, would you say, go to the events in your industry, find the correct people to interview? It sort of feels to me like the interview thing is a good way to go.
I mean, it's all networking
Yeah.
when it comes down to it. If you're going to go the interview route, like if you're going to do solo podcasts where you have to research and you're talking about one subject, I mean, I would try, unless you can do it full time, like a Dave Smith or something like that, I would try to stay at one episode a week. Because I mean, you may not even have, I mean, unless you have no job, then you can do that. But most people coming into it have a job. And I would say that keep it to one podcast a week. I made it 2 after a year and a half, and I made it 3. I made it 3 after I started my Patreon. When I started my Patreon, I was like, okay, I'm going to do 3, and that'll be one of the perks of having Patreon would be 3 episodes.
Bring more value and stuff. About how many listeners have you got now on a consistent basis?
9,000 to 10,000 an episode.
Badass. That's awesome. Congrats. So Sal, for you, your format is less interview and more like, these are my thoughts and this is what's going on, right?
Yeah, so I originally wanted to do like both, like the interview format and like these are my thoughts kind of episodes, but now it's sort of devolved into, I do 2 different formats now where I have myself and then 2 guests come on, like 2 subject matter experts, and be the 3 of us talking about something. And then I do another separate sort of format where it's either myself or just me and one other person, just one-on-one. I just had, for example, Pete and Chris from Stateless Productions on to talk about their upcoming documentary, and that was like sort of an example of the former. But one thing I wanted to touch on is what you said, X, is about how doing interviews is important, because I think I got this from Tom Woods. I think he said somewhere along the line, like, try not to turn down podcast requests because it's a great way to get your voice out there. And I've really taken it to heart. I've tried to I try to accept all of them. Obviously I can't, but I do my best. And I think that really helps build your brand and sort of get your voice out there.
Right. No, that's great. So when do you, that really makes me think about some of the episodes we've done as Unloose the Goose. There have been some weeks where it's like, it was only me, or, everybody was at a conference or at Jack's place. And I really, really enjoyed the getting to know the audience kind of, it was like us geese, but not the standard geese. It was like the geese listeners, right? The whole gaggle. And it was really awesome. I got to know a lot of listeners, and people would there was a line waiting to get into the Zoom, and it was really fun. So you find that like multiple person format, like we do here with Unloose the Goose, to be something that's appealing.
Yeah, it's not everybody's personality is going to jive. You have to pick your guests wisely. For example, I was just going to I just did I recorded an episode with Pete Klein and Jeff Dice on entrepreneurship. And Pete Klein is the subject matter expert on this topic. Well, him and Per Byland, but they have a strong disagreement on agorism, Pete Klein and Per Byland. So I didn't want to have both of them on at the same time,
right?
Because otherwise I knew that show would devolve into, and it will. I know. I would have steered it there.
Those guys have been debating that for 15 years.
Oh, longer, because Klein actually took up Rothbard's position and defended
it. That's right.
And Byland took up Konkin's position. So really the debate has been going on since like the mid-90s. But I think Per Byland won that debate hands down. But of course, like I said, I wanted to keep it germane to the economics of entrepreneurship. I didn't want it to devolve. So my point with saying all this is that you have to pick your guests wisely.
And or know how to mediate and de-escalate, right? Yeah, and do so in a good and diplomatic way, right? Because I didn't know what was going to happen when I opened up the gaggle episode. It was anybody in all of our Telegram chats. I had a couple Fire On folks in there, a couple Gaggle Goose folks, and it turned out to be spectacular, you know, and it was important to let everybody speak and be heard and all of this. So we'll get to that kind of thing. But Nicole's back. I guess had an internet glitch there.
Well, you know, I saw the cars on the ridge working on the internet earlier, and then we had a whole thing just happen. So we have deployed the backup access point in the hallway.
Nice, as a good prepper should.
Yes.
That's awesome. So welcome back. So the question was, basically, how did you get started, and what's the format that you find most appealing, and like how much work do you put into this every episode?
Well, I got started because I was so frustrated with my think tank day job that had gone from a passion for reducing government involvement in our lives to me being the person in charge of all the administrative stuff, which makes me crazy.
Right.
And so I was like following my passion, but in a role that was a really bad fit for me. And I'm a creative person. I know you're shocked to hear that. And so I I needed an outlet. And one day I had tried blogging, and just the discipline of writing all the time never happened. I'd write, 90 articles at once and then nothing for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm a verbal processor. So I process information by talking. And if you ever see me walking through the woods, just talking to myself, like making gestures, yes, I am crazy, but that's not me showing that I'm crazy. That's me processing something and trying to figure out an answer. And so I just started recording a podcast one day and put it out there. And then I committed to doing it once a week. Some stuff came up in my family, and I stopped for about 4 months. And somebody said, "Hey, you ever going to do a podcast again?" Because I'd done 7. And so I did podcast number 8, and then I made it a goal to make it to 20 and assess if I still wanted to do it. And once I got to 20, I went from there. My podcasts, I would do an interview probably one every 10 episodes or so, but it's just mostly me talking about how it is to live in a homestead, or a freedom idea that I'm wrestling with, or how to be a prepper, or, ideas for ways to self-improve so that you can be successful, because if you don't fix yourself, it's hard to also be successful. Not that assholes can't be successful, they can. Sometimes that's part of how they get that done. But that all kind of turned into a lifestyle podcast. I didn't know exactly that was what it was going to be about, but I wanted to share a more feminine view of walking to freedom, because a lot of guys get on and they talk about guns and defense and all of these things. And I'm more like, hey, let's grow some food and can it and take care of ourselves. So that's what got it started.
That's awesome. What is your listenership at now, and how many times a week do you go?
I go 3 times a week. I'm at about 2,500 to 3,000 an episode. And probably the last year has been the biggest growth in the podcast. So I was stuck at 500 for a really long time.
Sal, you do 2 a week, right?
I do them whenever I get a chance, man.
Right.
Sometimes it's once every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes it's 3 a week.
That's awesome. So here we have Pete, who does his 3 times a week, right? Sal does his whenever, and Nicole, you do yours 3 a week as well. But Pete started at once a week and kind of built from there. I do baseline every morning, every weekday morning. I need the weekends off. It just reminded me, Nicole, that I actually did a podcast, an audio only podcast in 2010. And I think I got like 30 episodes or something. And all I did was walk around while I was doing yard work and homesteading stuff at the farm, and just jabbering about anything and everything, from aliens to dimensions to like a lifestyle thing. Right. And I just didn't, I was like, yeah, this is stupid. I'm going to move on. And I kind of templated it after, like Jack and the survival podcast. I was listening every day at the time, and he had like this Ask Jack Questions podcast. And I was like, you know what, why not just try it? But it like, I didn't have that focus, right? I didn't have like a specific topic. Would you all find that having a topic is a good idea for anybody who's starting out? Sal, you look like you're about to say something.
I don't know if it's like important to have a specific. I mean, yes, you need a topic, but you don't have to niche down too hard per episode. I think it's more important to have a topic or a niche for your podcast in general, though, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like so Pete's podcast, he's a lot more cerebral than I am. And that's his style on his podcast. And he does interview people. We were talking about that. That's about when I fell off. I think he was talking about interviewing. And I think what has happened with Pete's, because as it's developed from starting to what it's become now, is he also figured out his specific style as he's gone. And that totally happened to me too, where I thought I was going to talk about growing beets and canning stuff. And now I'm telling people to take on their fears because fear is holding you back from being free, right? It's as you it helps you define your core. And so if you niche down too much and you're only going to talk about reading glasses and only ever about reading glasses, and you're stuck there, you're going to get a certain number of episodes in on reading glasses and that's it.
Yeah.
Unless you're a reading glasses guru.
Right. Pete, have you found that you're, like what Nicole was saying, like you have honed in more on A, the subjects that you want to talk about, B, you know, the sort of community that you and oh, and here's a big question is, are you making this your career? Is this like paying for your life now?
Okay, so let's go with the first part. If I'm going to talk about a subject, normally it's like I'm walking through my day, a subject hits me and I'm like, oh, okay, that'd be cool to talk about. And then I think about who can I talk with that about, you know? And
Yeah.
I mean, I know so many people, I can usually find somebody, but I'm not scared of having random people I know on Twitter on my show, like
Right.
Acerkist, who, you know, we don't know what his name is, but the dude rules on Twitter. And I'm going to have Neocon Remover, who's one of the best friggin' Twitter follows on the planet. I'm interviewing him this weekend. And I mean, I know what his real name is, but I'm not going to tell anybody, you know?
Mhm.
And so I'm just at the point where it's like, I just want to talk to people I know are going to have something interesting to say and not the same old bullshit, friggin' libertarianism 101. I mean, we can do those episodes, but you know, I'd rather normally when I get asked to go on other people's podcasts, that's when the libertarian 101 stuff gets asked to me. And I
Right.
don't mind if I'm on somebody else's podcast. And then sometimes I'll just release it on mine. I'm probably going to be quitting my day job the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Hell yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say that live on the internet? Because you just did.
Now it's real.
In case you didn't know, Peter's job,
Yeah.
you're on notice.
It's gotten to the point where I can support myself doing it. I have a payment processor on my on my website now, so I don't have to go through Patreon. It gives me about a 5% raise because Patreon takes so much and everything. And you know, I just have the Substack. Starting a Substack really helped a lot because
tell everybody what Substack is.
So Substack is basically just like a WordPress blog, but you can monetize. So you start, and you could actually host your podcast on Substack. Most people don't know that. They do have a way to host the podcast on there. But
will they remove you for censorship?
I mean, Curtis Yarvin is on there, and a lot of people who are considered no people. So I don't think so.
Oh, right.
But it was like, all right, I don't want to write and everything. And then I was like, okay, I do want to write, and I want to rant basically. And you know, I want to rant for like 4 paragraphs. And so I do that like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. But I mean, I have almost 100 paid subscribers on Substack now.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's an avenue for me to. Also, what's great about it too is I have about over 1,100 people subscribed. So I have an email list. So if I want to contact a whole bunch of people at once, I just make a post and it hits 1,100 people. And you know, it's been great. And people really like it. I mean, I've gotten to the point where it's like I have about, well, I had over 200 supporters on Patreon. A bunch of them dropped off to go to my website to do it. Yeah. But you know, now I have over half of the people subscribed through Substack who about almost 100 people, and it dropped down to 180 on Patreon. So slowly but surely it's Substack, I think, is safe as far as censorship goes. There are people on there that, but and also I have Subscribestar as well too, and there's really only about 20 people on there, but I have enough downloads now to sell advertising. It's just I don't, with some of the topics. I mean, I'm one strike away from being off YouTube.
Right.
Mhm.
If I have one more strike, my YouTube channel is gone.
We
And
have 2 here.
and it's bull. It's bull. I mean, what they accuse me of is like, look, you missed the episode where we talked about burning things down. It's like, I mean, how did that one pass? And you hit me. They literally said that when Vin and I were talking about the Time Magazine article where they said that they fortified the election, that we were calling for violence. And I listened to the whole thing again and was like, never said anything. We talked about a friggin' article.
Yeah.
And they said we were calling for violence. So, I mean, YouTube wants me gone. And so Library Odyssey is where I'm at. And then somebody came in, our Harley, the libertarianinstitute.org webmaster came in and said, you have like $800 worth of library credits on there.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So send that over to Bittrex, turn it into Bitcoin, and send it back to my wallet.
Yep. So that's actually a good segue. I do want to get to a little bit more of the lifestyle reasons why people are podcasting, but we're going to get into some of the more nuts and bolts stuff towards the latter half of this. And I did want to say in the middle of that, just so anybody who doesn't know or isn't familiar with Peter, he has the strongest fucking Twitter game I know anywhere. And if your blog is anything like what you do on Twitter, it's got to be super entertaining. I haven't.
Well, I'm permanently banned from Twitter, so I can't.
You are?
Yeah,
Floats.
I'm permanent.
So am I.
Banned from Twitter.
Can we be best friends now?
I mean, I have an account. I have an account on there which has up to about 1,600, 1,700 followers, and they all know who it is.
Oh,
but
right.
I keep it secret because there are people who will report me on there and
Totally.
get me kicked off of there. And this is actually since my main account. Well, I had an original account, my 2008 account got taken out a couple years ago, and then I built up my second account and I got taken out in January. Then I immediately made another one, and within a week I was gone because I was attacking some Zionists, and of course that's a no-no. And then the one I have, I was like, all right, I'm taking a break. I'm not going to go on Twitter for a while. And then someone said, hey, I saw an old account of yours, and if you remember the sign in, you can go. And so I've been on that one now for a while. And Sal, do you know what it is, Sal?
I think I found you.
Okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's you.
Yeah, I'm part of the GFY crew.
Yeah.
I tried to start another Twitter account and it just didn't. They found it and found me and removed me, and sort of like a badge of honor now.
Well, so, my phone number on there is a burner phone number.
There you go.
That's the best way to do it.
There you go. Yeah. So Sal, how have you monetized your podcast? Have you are you doing a paid subscription thing, or are you just using it as a means to drive sales to your product sales?
Mostly to drive sales and traffic, but I also do a little bit of advertising. I've done every year I hook up with the folks at the Miami BTC conference, and they'll give me some stuff, like a little perk packet and something, just to do free advertisements. But it's mostly just me getting my thoughts out, honestly, is what my podcast is. It's really not any significant form of money at this point,
It's not like a business for you. It's more like a creative outlet.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'm treating Baseline that way. I haven't really done any, I'm not looking for sponsorship. I'm not looking for sales or anything. It was funny because the audience, somebody in the audience took a screen capture of my show, put it on a mug, and then sent it to me. Right. And so I got this mug that has my mug on it, and it's got all of these great affirmations on the back. And then I would drink it as part of the shtick. And then people are like, I want that mug. And I was like, for real? So then I went and made one and sold a couple $100 of mugs.
There you go.
And it really was not, my purpose was not to make money off of the show. My purpose was to inform people that Firon exists and that we're doing some cool shit. It was like a marketing thing, and I tend to view my music and my art and all of those creative things as a way of saying, hey, look at me, I've got products or I've got something cool going on. So Nicole, how about you? Are you monetizing your podcast, and if so, how?
Yeah. So like you, I started my podcast not with the intention of how can I make money with my podcast, but as an outlet. And then over time, I started on Patreon, and it was a few years ago. And I can't remember who got banned off Patreon. One
I
of the
remember,
Liberty.
yeah, yeah. I don't
Anyway,
remember the person, but I remember when it was like,
I
oh,
was like, screw that, man. Like, these guys have just got kicked off. I've got about 20 subscribers only. And so then I'm a web developer. So I just launched a membership portal. And the reason I hadn't done it that way to begin with is it took time. And everybody on Patreon got a free coupon code to get their membership benefits on my website. And I drove everything there. And so I have a membership program where members get a monthly webinar that you can't get if you're not a member. I also sell a lot of coffee and a lot of coaching and website projects through the website. So those things together equal a full-time income for me.
That's so badass. So I think the listeners are all people who are like passionate about agorism, liberty, entrepreneurialism, and some might just not know how to get started and or what to do. And I think podcasting, if you have the personality for it and the consistency and the drive, it's something that you can do. I know Jack, one of the gaggle here, he transitioned from a full-time job that he hated to podcasting in his car, and then turning that into like a website with a membership. And he basically, in a couple of years, I don't even know how many years, but I know he turned it into a very successful project, right? And now does events, and we all go to them, and he helped inspire this whole gaggle. So he uses a specific model, I think, that you just touched on, Nicole, where it's you create a membership. Do any of you guys do this? Sal or Pete, do you have like a membership where people pay a yearly or monthly subscription?
No.
Yeah, I have that through my website. It's not like, I think the way Jack has it set up is his membership allows for discounts through the products and everything. Yeah, I don't have products or anything. It's just bonus tier kind of stuff. Right.
Nicole, do you have discount projects or products?
I have some discount arrangements. So if you like my coffee and you like my podcast and you buy my coffee, you should totally become a member of my podcast, because you're going to get a discount on your coffee. And then I have other, like a tea provider and another small collection of discounts. I got that idea from Jack, and it works for me, but not as well as the web. Like, the thing people want my membership for, besides supporting my podcast, is those webinars and the videos and the extra, like I do guides. We're just putting a chicken processing guide up soon. I took the idea and then learned from what people responded to change what the member benefits are. And I think that's an important part of a membership portal, right? Is that you end up tailoring it to your audience, which is going to be different than maybe the person you heard the idea from. And the other thing I want to say is, people who start a podcast with the sole focus of how am I making money, it's not bad to think, how can I make money? But if your only aim with it is making money, and you don't have a lot of investment to begin with, I don't think that's a good motivation. I think you need to be motivated by something bigger, by something that brings value to your listeners, because the most important part of your podcast is bringing that value to your listeners and supporting them, not necessarily how do I make a living off of this thing.
Well, right. You can immediately think about making money if you're bringing an audience. When Tom Woods was a New York Times best-selling author when he started his podcast, whenever Peter Schiff was on vacation, he was on the radio. So, he had a built-in audience. So I'm sure Tom started making money from it right away. But I started with, I think my first episode it was only on YouTube, and it had like 12 listens. So, I had to build it up I didn't even start a Patreon until over a year into my podcast. So, I didn't really think about making, I had thought, well, it might be nice to make money off of this, but it was like one day. I wasn't thinking that I was going to make any money right away. So
The other
Yeah, I
thing
mean, I've
too-
seen people upset that within a month or 2 or 6, they are not making, $100,000 a year. Like that's the scale they're upset about. And I'm thinking it's a bigger push than that if you can't afford um, some pretty large scale marketing efforts as part of your podcast and some pretty high quality content development.
back
That's-
on
Go ahead, Sal.
back on the episode we did on entrepreneurship, we spoke a little bit about infopreneurship. And I think podcasting to me is really just one aspect of infopreneurship, right? Like you want to sort of, Nicole, like what she really does is provide information about homesteading, right? That's basically what the shtick is. I do agorism, right? That's what the shtick is. So really the podcasting is just one aspect of that. But, blogging and 3D Printer Go Burr and Agora Threads, everything I do, Twitter, the affiliate marketing, it's all part of, trying to be almost like a agorist infopreneurship is, I guess, how I would term it,
Yeah, and then you kind of capitalize on all of the different ways that you can gain revenue streams through that. So that was a really good lead into this question that just came from YouTube from Buddy Lindsay. How do you break through a growth plateau? That's a good question because I'm going through that right now.
Easiest way.
Go ahead, Pete.
I see 1,000 download bumps when I get on Tom Woods or Dave Smith's show. You have to get on shows that are much larger than you. And that's what I did. I mean, I got up to 2,000 downloads pretty quick because I decided to write a stupid little book, and Scott Horton decided to I asked Scott Horton to do the forward to it. And because when I had it done and it was released and he tweeted it out, Dave Smith saw it, and Dave Smith was like, "You want to come on my show and talk about it?"
And then boom.
Yeah. And just recently I was on Dave's show, and I'm pretty sure recently being on Dave's show, I probably gained about 1,200 downloads an episode. And that was about a month ago.
And it's helpful to tag off that for you to, if you're going to be on Tom Woods, think about the episodes that you have on your podcast around that time and how attractive are they to those listeners so they get used to your personality, and then you're more likely to keep them. So
can I give another can I give another hint?
Yeah.
Have a really good podcasting voice.
You really do. You have a good one. So, all right. Sal, how do you break through a growth plateau?
Do something different. Think outside the box. Like you usually like the things that you're afraid of doing, or there's a reason you're afraid of doing them. So consider which one of those things could be beneficial for you. A lot of times we get stuck in like a routine of what's comfortable. And I think we have to sort of avoid that and be cognizant of like not falling into that trap.
I heard there's some influencer kind of thing on TikTok. Like I've just been all about TikTok lately. It's really nuts. But there is, they said basically you have 3 kinds of content. You have your bread and butter content, which is like that which you do regularly, do well. You don't need to think about, you can just do it. Then you have your out on a limb stuff that is like you try, different things. And then you have stuff that you put a little bit of extra work in, or that you think will be, a little edgier or something that's sort of like your honey one. It's like it busts you up and breaks through to a greater viral sharing situation. So it's like, I know in baseline what I do is I have my basic stuff that just happens, right? Like I can wake up, know the news and be like, I'm just going to, shoot from the hip here. And then I have things like I did where I dressed up like Kylie McEnany and fielded questions from the audience or whatever. And like that, everybody loved that, and that brought me a lot of attention. And I know like some of the people in the administration actually watched that because of that. So, that's one way I would have. Nicole, how about you?
Well, there's not a lot of other things to add from what y'all already said. I would say this: controversy and pissing people off does get additional listeners, but the same thing is true. You get them for a minute. The same thing is true that with adding on to what Pete said about Tom Woods.
Yeah.
If you piss people off and bring them into a podcast that also fits with what they're interested in listening to, then they're more likely to say. So like that initial spike I think you always have to have a plan to keep it. And some of that you won't keep. It's going to spike and then it's going to go down a little higher.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is don't get too discouraged when you're on a plateau. That consistency and good content and keeping it going is really important even when you're at the plateau.
Yes, I made it a point to wake up every morning at 4:30, and before the kids wake up, you know, I'm usually sitting and in my costume and speaking to the camera by 4:45, and I'm done by 5. And then I'm editing from 5 to 6 or 6:30 usually. It takes like an hour and a half, sometimes 2, and then everything goes up around 7. And that way I still have time in my day to do things, and like all of the business meetings and all of the shit that I got to do, and contracts and all that. So, you know, I'm considering doing a full-time like podcast. I'm trying to figure out the if I'm going to do it 3 days a week, once a week, every day, interviews, you know, kind of figuring out. So this conversation is helping me in that regards too. I also would like to speak to operational security, right? Everybody touched on this a minute ago with like Jordan Peterson getting kicked off of Patreon. Yeah, somebody else fucking owns that. And if they're, you know, limp-membered, you know, lefties that hate freedom and thought, you know.
Now this video's coming off YouTube. Okay, go ahead.
Which also brings, it's a good point. We got removed off of YouTube, right? We had one of our episodes because we were talking about the nanobot papers. Show me your papers. And because of that, we lost an episode. We did put it up on Odyssey and sent the links out and all of this, but like the reach on Odyssey is not as big as YouTube, but somebody like Peter with content that people are finding informative and educational and entertaining, boom, he's got like $800. And like, do you want thousands of views or you do want $800 in cryptocurrency? Right? Like higher value.
I've made more off of Odyssey than I have off of YouTube monetizing videos, and I hardly have any. That's because you're getting tipped. That's how you make the money on there. And what was funny was when I went through, when Harley told me, he's like, go through, man, check it out. There was a video I did with James Corbett that had like over 400 credits on it. Like it had been tipped like over 400 credits. I was like, what the hell, man? That was insane.
How do you guys do tags? Do you use hashtags well? Or, you know, in your opinion, Nicole, is it hashtags or is it getting like what Pete did and getting on bigger audiences, like or iTunes organic reach?
I have not done as well with hashtags or search terms as I have with earned media, which is getting covered either by a newspaper or on another podcast for an interview or on a YouTube channel. That's just me though. I know of people who have turned their key terms into a science who do pretty well with that. But I think your topic has to be one people are looking for, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Jack's kind of a master of that. I'm better at earned media. That's what I do best is earned media. I get cool people on my show and I go on cool people's shows, and that does the biggest thing. And then of course the print media it's really easy to get on print media if you make it easy for them to print your things. And that's also a tip for when you are on a big show like Tom Woods or somebody else, or no, I'm sorry, if you have somebody on your show that's a bigger name, when you put your show out, you say, hey, the show went out. Here's the link. Here's a blurb you can say. You just made it super easy for them to send that out on their Twitter or whatever they have. And that's how you drive people when you have an interviewee on your show that's a big name. That's how you drive it more, because most people will share, but they may not write something.
Right.
They may not write that blurb because they're in a hurry. If you give them the blurb, they'll do it.
That's an awesome little tidbit. There's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. Some of y'all may know him. Some listeners may know him. He's an entrepreneur. Kind of, he hired people to follow him around with a camera, and he started doing like all these little micro shows in the form of entertainment, but they were educational, insight, and, you know, backstage access to the life of an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, whatever. But one of the things he suggests, which is really, really cool, I think, is he has this method where you do a video podcast. You turn the audio into an audio podcast. You have it transcribed and turned into a reading, a script or an article on a website, and then you have essentially like all you maximize all of the outputs that you can with just the one event. Are any of you all doing that, and if so, how?
That's what I do. I record, everything's recorded on video, and then I pull the audio from the video and turn it into a podcast. Sometimes I'll put the video out for patrons. Sometimes I just shelve it, and for whenever I decide to create an Odyssey account. But in terms of like writing and stuff, I have done that. I've like done interviews with people. That's really good to do if you screw up an interview, right? If you forget to record or something, whatever, a million things can go wrong. Like, at least you don't have to like lose that content. You can still put it to use somehow.
Yes. Nicole, how do you do that? Do you do video as well?
So sometimes, and it depends on how moody I am that day, literally. So I know what I should do, but I'm going to tell you what I actually do. If I'm having a hard day, I just do the audio podcast, because that I can get it done quickly. I can get it done and I can move on. I have a big event at my homestead next week, so my listeners are only getting audio this week. However, when I record audio, I don't do a lot of editing as part. I just go and I say stupid stuff sometimes, and then I make fun of myself on my podcast for saying stupid stuff. And so I do record live on YouTube right now. I'm probably going to move that to the Flote app, FLOTE, just because of that Big Brother problem at YouTube. And
live on Flote?
Huh?
Can you go live on Flote?
I just found in my account that I can go live on Flote. So I'm going to test that. And so is Unloose the Goose going to test that.
Let's do it.
Yes. But so I do the live video, and I get some comments on that, and I talk to people. I build it into the podcast in a way that a listener would like it. Then I'm recording the audio at the same time, and that goes into the podcast. And then my show notes are not a script, but they're fairly detailed. Usually it's not usually just 5 words to remind myself. There's usually more. And then that goes up online. I haven't done the transcription. I've thought about it, but I'm not so sure it's necessary. I should actually do a trial for a month and see if that bumps up my traffic to my website.
Okay. And Pete, your process there.
Yeah, I've started doing video whenever I can. If I have somebody who's on who, one of the Twitter folk who doesn't want their face shown or something like that, then it'll just be all audio. But I've been uploading a lot of video lately. Started doing it to YouTube. Now I have to do it to to Odyssey, to library and everything. And then I just turn that into audio as well. I mean, I get so much more from audio only.
Yeah.
And then transcribing, I mean, I doubt anybody wants to read. I mean, if I have 2-hour podcasts sometimes.
Right.
So, I mean, how many words is that going to be? And really the easiest way you could do that is if you do have the ability to put it up to YouTube, then you can get a transcript off of YouTube. It's not going to be perfect, but if you have like a 15-minute or 20-minute podcast you want to transcribe and put out there,
right,
YouTube will allow you to do it if you don't get kicked off.
Right. So that brings up, so you don't live stream though, Pete, right? You record.
I do live stream sometimes. I've taken more to live streaming, and normally when it's an event, if something has happened and I'm like, okay, let's get a take on this. But normally when I do it, I like to have people come on who are going to have like the most outrageous take, so we can do something live and just like Aaron from Friends Against Government from Timeline Earth, do a live stream with him, and you have no idea what he's going to say. And I think people really like that about a live stream when they see it pop up, because I do it so rarely that it's like, holy crap, what's he doing?
Yeah. I did a live stream on TikTok the other day. There was this mask burning event in Fort Lauderdale on the beach, which was, like I don't usually go to those kinds of things, but there was a specific person who I wanted to meet, and they were there. So I went and I live streamed, and I have live streamed before on TikTok at some very, contentious events, let's say. And I was not removed then, I wasn't banned because I never used hashtags or anything, but it was a very controversial event. And I had a bunch of trolls on there and they all reported me and I was banned. I can't live stream on TikTok. And now my viewership is like totally nerfed. Like I can't, like I hit a certain amount and it just doesn't go above it. Whereas before, like I was hitting hundreds of thousands of views. And so now I'm like, it's like, I want a secure platform that I can live stream on. And, until Firearm's ready, like it needs to be something that's operational secure. If I want to monetize it, that I can. So I think that, it just reminds me what a effed up time we're living in where they can just remove you. And, I get the libertarian thing, well, it's their business and you don't have to go and do business at their business. But if they're the biggest player on the block and give you the actual ability to monetize and make a business out of your ideas, your thoughts, and your creativity,
TikTok is just super leftist. They're like Reddit. They might as well just be Reddit at that point.
Is Reddit? I don't even know what Reddit is.
I haven't been on Reddit in a long time.
It's like a neoliberal hellhole.
Yeah, I thought Reddit was like a very open thing where all kinds of people could share.
Yeah, no.
No?
No.
Or is that 4chan?
I think I'm even banned from the subreddit on agorism, I think.
No way.
How'd that happen?
How did that happen?
I don't even know, to be honest with you. I'm banned from like anarcho-capitalist I'm banned from like all sorts of subreddits. So
You must have said what you thought.
yeah, God forbid, right?
Start a website, anarcho-capitalist go burr. And just do like a counter anarcho-capitalist site. That would be great.
Oh man.
So I just got a comment from Bobby Joe Wood, says Reddit is hostile commie territory.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, I do a show that is, I think it's centrist, but evidently it's not. And so I get although, it was only on the live stream where I got trolls. Like I don't have any trolls. Like everybody's super nice.
The platform. If you go to a non-mask event or like a mask burning event on TikTok, there is like 20-year-old like girls with green hair waiting for you.
Yeah, that was basically what happened. There was some like really deplorable shit people were saying, and I was really surprised. So in terms of nuts and bolts, let's get into the nuts and bolts part of this because we're coming up on the half end, the tail end of this. If you were to suggest, I know if Jack were here, he'd say, consistency is key. If you're going to do it every day's best. For somebody who's getting started, who's not really sure if they want to do this, how would you recommend them to start, Nicole?
Start.
Just start.
It's such a simple answer, but start and know a couple of things. One, if you host your audio not on your own server, it's not the end of the world, but you can set it up in ways where you're driving people to your own website anyway. But don't let that be the thing that stops you from starting. Start recording, start producing, come up with 10 to 20 show ideas and just do it. And don't wait for the first one to be perfect. Just record it. Get it out there. Get your friends to listen to it. Get them sharing it and see if you like it. And if you do, then you can start developing a show template for different kinds of shows that'll really boost you. You can be on social media promoting your thing. You can start getting guests on your show to grow your show. But if you don't start, it's kind of like the answer to the unasked question is always no. If you don't start, you don't know if you love it. And if you don't love it, then you'll move on to something else, and that's fine too.
Do you also use Substack to host on your own website?
I don't. I have my own WordPress website hosted at Liquid Web.
And you just upload the audio right on.
I do a hack. I use Libsyn for I'm that person who I have all copies of all my episodes backed up here and in the cloud somewhere else.
How do you spell Libsyn?
I produce on Libsyn, but if you click on the direct link to my show, it doesn't take you to their blog. It takes you back to my website. And that's how I drive people to my website.
What's Libsyn and how do you spell it?
libsyn.com is just a podcast producing tool. That it's an affordable way to host audio. You do not want to host your audio on the same server as your website.
How come?
Because what happens with the audio when you get a lot of downloads is it overwhelms your website if you don't build it right, and then your website goes down. So even the places, I mean, Jack has a different scale of server, right?
Right.
And it's not cheap. So what I'm going to next is putting my audio somewhere else, like Amazon Web Service, except for now I don't like Amazon, so it's not going there. And then I will still have my web server on Liquid Web, so that it accesses that and doesn't screw up my website.
Is Libsyn like Blueberry? Blubrry?
So Blueberry, which is what we use on Unloose the Goose, is a plugin in WordPress that you tell it where your audio file is. Our audio files are on Jack's server for this. Blueberry works with another hosting, and it might be Castos or somebody else, another audio hosting specialist. And you can connect those two things, but you don't have to. I don't know if it's Castos. Castos may be Seriously Simple Podcasting, which is another plugin you can use.
I use Blueberry, love it. I actually have an audio version of Baseline, and I have like a couple hundred listeners a day, and I'm like, why would they? But hey, it's short, right? Like I was like, again, it's video and I'm editing it, and that's specifically part of the shtick, and I want it to take as little time as I can, because it really is like 1 minute, an hour per minute. I've got it down to like a science now, but I didn't want to be spending a lot of time editing. But I take it and I send an audio version to Blueberry, and it goes up to iTunes and all of these other places, and it'd be easy.
Yeah, and you can syndicate with that tool. It's a good syndication tool.
In your opinion, is that operationally secure? Meaning like you can't get censored off of Blueberry? I mean, they can remove you from like iTunes, let's say, but
you can get censored off the syndications. I don't know. I'll have to look at how Blueberry works, but I would think there would be a way they could mess with your life if they really wanted to, but I don't think they would.
Yeah.
But anytime you're using a vendor for something, they can. The thing you want to make sure you have in place is that your hosting is set up so they can't just turn the switch off. Or in my case, they can. So I have all my audio files in case that happens, and that's going to be a bad 2 weeks for Nicole.
Right. Sal, Peter, do either of you use Libsyn or Blueberry?
I use Libsyn. They make it really easy. You just upload to Libsyn, and they send it out to iHeartRadio and Player FM and all the other ones, and iTunes and stuff like that. I also post to SoundCloud because it's sort of like it's good to have it in more than one spot. But everything I do is in the cloud, so that's the only way I do it right there. So
are Libsyn and Blueberry competitors? Are they providing the same product?
I don't know if Blueberry is. Libsyn's a podcasting host, though.
Yeah, so Blueberry is a plugin that will allow you to syndicate your audio file as a podcast, and you can choose where, like, it goes out to a network of different providers like iTunes or what, like they create a feed like we had for Unloose the Goose. Like it goes out to a different set of providers, but then we also had to create and register the feed with different podcast hosts like iTunes or whatever. So that's what they do. They have your RSS feed set up all the way you need to, so you don't need to know anything about an RSS feed other than how to copy a link.
Right.
Libsyn does that for you. They create your RSS. But you can also have a different RSS on your website just to make it more confusing. And their syndication is much more robust, and they host your actual audio file. So you're paying a subscription every month for your audio files to be hosted, which is the most expensive part of having a podcast besides your own time.
Right.
Peter, what about you? Libsyn?
Libsyn. And yeah, I have a backup that if I do get taken down, I can do it I can upload directly to the Libertarian Institute, and because those servers are private.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Libsyn for now is fine. Like Sal said, you just upload it and it gets sent everywhere. It's like, Amazon. And
so
everything.
Why did we as Unloose the Goose do Blueberry instead of Libsyn?
Because our audio files are hosted on Jack's server, which is in another country with better privacy laws.
Oh, got you.
So, and it's free, right? Because he's already paying it for his podcast.
Right.
And then we didn't have to pay a subscription on Libsyn.
Oh, got it. Awesome. Yeah, because I create the audio files. They're all on my iPhone. And then I upload it to Blueberry from like the thing, and then I put it to SoundCloud and the others. But I also went an extra step further and made an NFT out of each of my episodes, so they can't ever be removed from history.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the distribution, and we talked a little bit about creating and how we go either from audio to video or video to audio, and also, writing. And then in terms of portals, essentially, everybody, like Pete, you said you started on Patreon, and then you were like, F this. Nicole, you did too, and kind of took that in your own hands and made your own site with your own membership, correct?
Yes.
And I think everybody would know the benefits of that are so that you don't have it, removed. And we've talked a little bit about, monetization strategies and growth strategies. What are some hints and some tricks that you've learned on your own that you think would be really helpful to any of our listeners if they wanted to start a podcasting business?
Because I'm not a GarageBand expert, which is what I use to edit mine, because I already knew how to use GarageBand for rock music. I actually upload my files to a service called Auphonic, AUPHONIC. And AUPHONIC. Auphonic. So it's like audiophonic.
Yeah.
Right. And I have set parameters to compress the audio so the loud gets less loud and the quiet gets more loud.
Yeah, normal.
So that you don't have a lot of, I'm away from the mic, I'm near the mic, I'm away from the mic, I'm near the mic. It smooths that out. And that has really increased people's happiness with the quality of my audio. You can do it by editing, but for me, I get, 8 hours of free processing a month. And then every couple of months I have to buy credits. It's totally worth the ease of use on that.
Does that also remove empty spaces? Because part of the editing that I do in video, right, is like I go and cut all of the spaces in between and then just smush it together like extra exaggerated. But I know that there are softwares that can just remove the dead space in an audio file. Is that something you use? I don't know.
It's cute. You think I have dead space, and you've just heard me rattle on for this whole episode.
No, I mean, like, there are specific things that can get rid of ums, or like that space that was just between my last word and my next word, right? Like even short little things. Right? So I don't know if anybody, Sal, Pete, do you know of any software that does that?
You can pay people on Fiverr.
Yeah, that's true. But if you're on a production schedule.
Jack, what does he use for his? It's the program he used just does that. And I can't remember the name of it. It's really old though.
Maybe we'll ask him in the Goose group chat.
Yeah, like he has something that'll just it's a smush. He'll go through and edit stuff out, and it's a smush thing that brings everything together. So he does get rid of the empty spaces.
Yeah,
he's the podcast expert, right? Where is he?
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic.
I mean, I'm still ghetto using Audacity, so
I think it's Audacity that Jack might use, but that might not be true.
GarageBand.
For anybody who's doing video podcasting, I use LumaFusion on the iPad. It's kind of like, there's all my baseline episodes. So it has like for those of you who are listening, I'm showing what it looks like on the screen. It has a bunch of fields, and I can put in like the effects, and then I splice up everything. Whoops, that's gonna mess everything up. Shit.
There goes the next
he just messed up his things live.
There's the next episode screwed up. So I put like my logo and stuff, and that brings me to a question. Have you guys ever heard of OBS?
Yeah, I can't stand OBS.
What is that?
It's really like uncomfortable.
I cannot stand OBS. Oh my God.
What is it?
It's a broadcasting software, open broadcasting software, OBS. And it's essentially like you could actually have like a full studio setup where you have multiple cameras, switch between the cameras, but the programming inside is so non-user intuitive. User interface is just super non-intuitive. It's super difficult. It's like, why would you do it that way? Why can't But it makes things look really cool, right? Like what we could do for Unloose the Goose here is if there's 4 of us, each one of us are in a quadrant on somebody's screen on YouTube. We could make like a cool frame so that there was like a goose theme to it or whatever. And then you can have like
lower thirds and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, scrolling tickers. You could do all kinds of really cool stuff. And if you take the time to actually do it, like it really ups the production quality. I used to stream D&D live, Dungeons and Dragons, and
Why am I not shocked?
I don't know why the Goose Crew hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons live yet, but whatever.
We should do that. That would be amazing. We'd have to have drinks, and then but I did that, and I created this whole framework with like the logo and like these moving parts, and nobody watched it, of course, but it was still like, fun to do. So there's a whole nother level if you want to take it up a notch in your own podcasting adventures. And I say this too because there's actually some people in the Fire On chat and who have joined the Unloose the Goose from the Fire On chat who have been starting their own podcast, and so this might actually really be helpful for them. Natasha, I'm talking to you.
Is there a version of OBS?
What's that?
Is there like a more intuitive paid version of OBS?
I haven't found one, but I haven't really looked.
So I know that we've been looking at Unloose the Goose at testing StreamYard, which is a streaming tool that allows you to stream to multiple platforms, and you can pop up tickers under people's names, and it has more controls. John Bush uses that, and that's what they used for the Greater Reset conference. That's a pretty slick program too, that I'm also looking at starting to do that instead of my like lame one-faced YouTube live streams on my podcast.
Right on. Yeah, I'm visualizing. Oh my God, I'm getting deja vu. What?
It would be really cool if we could all stream to all our YouTube channels that haven't been banned yet at one time, plus
That
our
would be
Odyssey channel.
That would be cool if we can stream to Odyssey. I don't know if we can live stream to Odyssey yet, but
I know they've been working on it. What'd you say,
I know.
Pete?
I don't think that's available, is what he said.
Yeah.
I know D Live, but you can't stream to D Live unless you already have like an audience that's like 12,000 people or something. Might not be 12,000.
Right?
What's that?
Twitch
You can live stream as well, but I think they started removing people now. They've gotten on the censorship bandwagon.
Yeah, Twitch has. Yeah, because I think Twitch is owned by Amazon.
Is it?
Yeah.
Goes back to Amazon.
So what are the choices then for live streaming then?
Well, Float app has it now, and I haven't seen if that has a time limit or how that works, so I'll be playing with that one. And I know Odyssey has beta tested theirs, so their intention is to have live streaming. And I'm sure we'll jump ship as soon as we have a viable alternative here.
Yeah, we're going to need it to keep up the censorship, especially with the way X goes on.
Sorry, everybody's talking about D&D in the YouTube live stream chat now, and I'm all like, oh, let's talk about D&D. They all want us to play, by the way.
Yeah.
And then there's Discord, right? You can go live on Discord, but it's more of a discussion. And same with Telegram. Like I've actually been using the voice chat feature in there pretty successfully, and just having roundtable discussions. And I think that goes back to Pete, what you were talking about, and Sal, you guys have these discussions, right? And we've had that on Unloose the Goose. So if you're wondering, like what can you do? What's your passion? What's your shtick or your niche? And like Peter says, the discussions, like for me, that really works well because you don't have to put a lot of time doing research and or notes or any of that sort of stuff. I know for me, like it's really about time and really making most efficient use of my time and putting out a creative and good product that people find entertaining and educational. Let's see, we've got 15 minutes left, and I want to give everybody an opportunity, A, to plug their podcast, B, to give us, I didn't get through Sal and Peter, your hints and secret tricks.
You want to go? Okay. Be yourself. I mean, I think that my podcast would have grown a lot more if I had just decided to be myself in the first 3 years. And in the last year, I've just decided to let everybody see who I am. And people, I mean, I've doubled my audience in the last 12 months. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that as soon as this COVID madness started, I was not scared to talk about it. I was going to talk about it. And I talked about it with people like Vin, and we had a different take on it. I mean, we're talking about we're doing spiritual takes on it, or other people are scared to do that because there are so many friggin' atheist libertarians, and I don't really care about them. I mean, they can, I do care about them. I love them, but but I like the ones that are, like, well, live and let live. The ones that are like hyper attack people on Facebook, yeah, those people just get blocked out automatically, I think. And they seem like ops to me. I mean, why would you want to? Why would you want to? 80% of the population, when 90% of the population are theists, so you're gonna say fuck you to them. Just be yourself and have interesting conversations. Don't be scared to talk about stuff that you might not want to talk about. Don't be scared to have people on who, in the last year, I started having people on who, I mean, I had Paul Gottfried on before, and of course he's a no person to a lot of people, but I've had like Curtis Yarvin on a couple times in the last year, and people have complained. Ryan Dawson, people have complained, try to get me fired from Libertarian Institute because I had Ryan Dawson and Curtis Yarvin on in the same week. And that just makes me want to. It was like when they did that, I was like, I reached out to Scott and I was like, hey, can you get me Pat Buchanan's number? I'm like, yeah, you're just gonna make me you're gonna make me get somebody on there who's just gonna drive you crazy, because you can't. I'm not the kind of I don't do well when people are like, well, you really shouldn't do this. No, I think I'm gonna double down on this, but
so authenticity, people really dig that, whether it's being anti-authoritarian or whatever. Be you, be fully you.
I would say exactly everything Pete just said. I would echo all of that, and the only other thing I would add is to try to like remain like a consistent source of whatever information you're providing. Try to like provide that in a consistent way. So would it make sense for Nicole's audience? Imagine if like, all of a sudden one day she decides to talk, today we're going to discuss being an astronaut or something. Completely unrelated. Like,
I would listen.
I know, so would I. But I'm trying to think of a better example. But like, my point here is like Jack does survival. Like if he just all of a sudden switched niches, his audience would sort of be lost. So
tulips.
You can be flexible, but you can't be too flexible.
Yeah. And I would echo everything everybody said, and I would add, consistency. Yeah. Whether it's you're going to do 3 episodes a week, do them on the same time, same day, same bat channel, all of it. I think the reason why Baseline has taken off so huge is because I'm always there, and people like, short, quick. Oh, they got it, and it's funny, and they've laughed, and that was my goal. Is like during the times of all of this crazy stuff, like we need to laugh. And we need to laugh at the crazy stuff, or else it's going to be dark,
I think just to drive that point home, I think like the one reason why my podcast has remained relatively small, like, I don't know, I've been doing this for like a while, and I only have like, I don't know, maybe for a good episode, I'll get like 3 or 4, probably like 4,000 downloads for like a good episode. But if I was more consistent, then I think that number would be higher, but it's not. I'm not. Like I put out an episode whenever I feel like it. But to me, it's not worth it. Like there isn't that motivation there to like do it every day. I'm not as prolific as like Tom Woods or Jack or something,
Yeah. I am considering a daily weekday thing, but like I don't want to edit video, I want to do it live, and I want to just put it up like as quickly as we do, Unloose the Goose like this. I could do this kind of a thing, but I have to figure out the timing and how many days and stuff. And I would really go ahead.
No, it's just a lot of work. I don't know how like everybody does it so prolifically.
Yeah.
I think you get efficient over time. At first, it takes a lot of time to do an episode, and then you start getting into your groove. So I can knock out A Thought of the Walk, which is just a 15-minute episode, in an hour.
Yeah.
And that used to take me half a day.
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest thing for me is comms, being able to like consistently keep up with emails and writing people and trying to get people. How do you do it, Pete? How do you get people on and fill up? Like Jack has, I guess, an application process, and that helps.
Right,
do you have that?
No, I just contact people. I mean, I just reach out. I have so many people's phone numbers that even if I don't know how to contact somebody, I'll just reach out to somebody I know who knows that person and say, can you make an introduction and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, that's just networking and having people speak up, speak on my behalf and everything. I wish I would have got the Pat Buchanan interview, but Pat at that time wasn't doing interviews.
Yeah. So if I start a longer form interview process, would all of you come on my episodes?
Of course.
Sure.
Definitely.
All right, awesome. So with that, last thoughts and well wishes. Nicole, we'll start with you.
My only thought is,
and your podcast and where everybody can find it in your website.
oh yeah, okay. I have a podcast. It's called Living Free in Tennessee. It is about my journey to living the life I choose, which is on a homestead, growing a lot of our own food. Screw what the normal people want. I'm going to live how I'm happy. And I'm happy out here all by myself without a lot of noise and pollution and jerks. And we have a really fun life here. We have fun. So that's livingfreeintennessee.com. I just want to encourage people who want to start a podcast to get started. Don't measure yourself against people who've been podcasting for 12 years and have 250,000 downloads. Just start and measure yourself against, am I bringing value to the people that I serve with my podcast? Am I having fun? And can I leave this thing behind in the world long term to make it a better place?
Yes. And you're also you're giving educational stuff on homesteading and all kinds of tips and tricks, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but something you said made me think it's like you're also telling a story. Like
The whole time.
that's so awesome.
Yeah, I help people start their little businesses.
Yeah. So consulting and stuff too. That's great. I know John was doing that. He was doing like crypto consulting. We're going to have another episode soon on crypto, folks. I know everything's tearing out and like just going to the moon, but we took a round robin and sort of like topic roulette today. So Sal, what about your website, your podcast? Where can people find you?
Yeah. So, well, first, like, I guess the one final thought I want to leave out there is that it's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. I want to stress that to people. It's like you said, you have to book the interviews and you have to conduct the interview, and then you have to edit the podcast, and you have to make a show notes page, and you have to get it out on Libsyn or Blueberry or something like that. And then people are going to contact you, and it's a lot of work that goes into it. So really only do it if you think that you have something to provide value to others with. Like, if you're just going to be out there BSing to people, then don't do it. It's just, there's a million podcasts and it's not going to work out. Think to yourself, like, what are you an expert in? What are you a subject matter expert in? And niche down. So that, other than that, you can find me at saldiagorst.com. You can follow me on all your different social media platforms. And of course, 3D Printer Go Burr. We're going to have a major sale on the V2 starting Friday, and Agora Threads, where we sell clothing and household items for agorists. Everything is, of course, available for cryptocurrency. We prefer it. So yeah.
Very awesome. Thanks. Peter.
Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. My Substack is actually called By Any Memes Necessary. I sort of really like Malcolm X, and so I had to steal that and change memes to memes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, what else did you want? You want to say something about what?
Final thoughts and you.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is fun. It really is. And one thing that I learned right away is if you invite somebody, you're very rarely going to get a no. Most people are really willing to talk and really they want to talk. So, just jump into it. Even if it's, you start out with just yourself, you start out with, a couple friends, you invite a couple people on. I mean, like Scott Horton will not say no to anybody, really. I mean, you'd have to be vile, putting out vile content for him to say no. So somebody like him, immediately you're going to get, when I have Scott on, it's like 5-figure downloads because people want to hear what he has to say. So you can go in that direction. And, but really it's have a long-term plan. I think I don't know who said it. It's probably apocryphal by now, but most people don't get past like the 7th episode. So if you have like 15 or 20 planned out, and then you know what your long-term plan is in podcasting, because a lot of podcasts start and a lot of podcasts disappear. And I have people who start podcasts, and then I go and search the name of the podcast in the podcatcher, and I'll see like 5 or 6 different podcasts that were that exact name, but never made it to like episode 5. So
Right.
it really lets you know that if you're not going in with a plan, you're probably going to fail. And now I sound like what, a friggin' motivational speaker?
Well, you are.
You're at motivational Twitter.
Sometimes the motivation is very, direct.
Abrupt. Yeah. So, thank you, guys. My name is Xavier Hawk. I do a hilarious daily news under 140 seconds, hardly ever anymore, on every platform that I'm still allowed on, except for Twitter. You can find me at Xavier Hawk. My company's Firon. I do a lot on Telegram, t.me/Firon, and Firon.com, as John likes to say. And so thank you so very much for being here with us and sharing this goose adventure, where we kind of stick it to the man and tell him to F off and leave us alone, and figure out great and creative ways to do that. So I hope that you get some value from the podcasting episode on how to do it. Give you some hardcore, like nuts and bolts stuff, everything from Libsyn, Blueberry, OBS, Euphonic, and StreamYard, and some of the different ways to structure a podcasting business, how to get interviewees and interviewers and different formats. So Peter, thanks. Sal, thank you. Nicole, thank you very much. You guys have a